Well, hello and welcome to another playthrough of a game here. I'm playing some WarioWare Minigame Mania, which was a Game Boy Advance game, which came out in I think the year 2003. And it's a quaint little game. I mean, being a Game Boy Advance game, there isn't a huge amount to it. But the concept itself is just pretty cool, and it's basically a mini-game compilation, I suppose you would call it. Sort of themed around video games. Came out 2003, and I remember when this was first released. I remember sort of going round to a friend's house out in the country near where I live, and there was a group of us around there. The parents must have been away, and we just had a little party. Probably drunk our first few beers, and we played this on an emulator on my friend Neil's PC, and all of us instantly just fell in love with it. I think we actually sat and watched the film Clerks at the end of that night. So I'm showing off the intro sequences here. Probably the first time I actually watched the intro sequences in full since the first time I played through the game, because it's not really an important part. There's a nice little bit of backstory behind it. Basically, it's about Wario, who's, let's face it, the best Mario character, finding that, well, next to Waluigi possibly actually, but he finds out that computer games are suddenly this new fad, and people love them, and he thinks, oh, I could make a bit of money making this. Wario, obviously, if you know his backstory from the other Mario games, he tends to love money and making it, and getting, well, I did plan to do a playthrough of, I think the full title is Super Mario Land 3 Wario Land, which was originally an original Game Boy game, and that's honestly one of my favourite platformers, especially portable platformers of all time. I think it's much better than the normal Mario Land games, and that the whole sort of premise of that game is you're going through trying to get enough money so that Wario can build himself a castle, probably to rival Bowser or King Koopa or whatever you would like to call him. So the intro videos in WarioWare just give you a little bit of flavour, a little bit of a setup for the various characters you meet that form the basis of the little minigame compilations that we'll be seeing. So the first level is against Wario. You'll see him setting up his little idea here to make some games, and obviously Wario being Wario, it probably could be considered quite lazy that there's not actually any thought put into them, and they're just kind of cash grabs. So basically, each stage it's a micro game. So each stage you'll have to do several small games that last a couple of seconds. And you'll see the variety just coming up here with the very first one that we see in the game, which you're only given sometimes a one-word or two-word instruction here, and you only really have to use one button on the controller and the D-pad to control the game. And obviously, with it being the start here, these initial first few stages are pretty simple. There's not a lot to them. It's fairly easy to work out what you have to do, especially when you're under the duress of speed. I don't think any of these actually copy directly any particular game that you would mention. I think maybe that's based off Spy Hunter, or that particular one there, where you're just set to weave between the cars. I actually thought that it was sort of just lane based and you only had like 4 lanes you can move through, but it is actually you can move as far as you like. So almost got cut out on that one. And despite it probably being, I don't know, close to 20 years since I played this game, a lot of it was a bit of muscle memory, and just remembering how each individual game controls. That's probably the hardest part, and I think you'll see that in the first game where I actually lose a life. I think stage 3, maybe stage 4. Can't quite remember at this point. This little section obviously based off Mario, with the being asked to jump on a mushroom. And only 10 stages in for the first level, and you get a boss stage, where you have to do a boxing style minigame here against this hanging ball and chain. And it turned out to be pretty easy. I think I did this first time, no bother. So I suppose there's a general theme to each minigame stage. Just reading off the Wikipedia here now that sports. There's one particular one. I think it's the last level actually in this video, where all the minigames are based around Nintendo NES games. So I think that's probably my favourite one. Certainly from what I remember, and certainly so far from what I played of this. I have only recorded this single episode worth of gameplay. And I'll have to go back and record a couple more to get to the end of the game. There's not actually a huge amount to this in terms of stages. I think there's probably 14 in total, and I get through I think the first 5 in this episode here. And with that we'll move on to the next character, who is Jimmy. I don't know that these characters are from other Mario games at all. I certainly don't recognise them. Wario's the only one who I know from like previous Mario games. But they just serve basically as Wario's friends and kind of the overall bosses of the stages that you'll be playing. Just taking this from Wikipedia just now, there's 213 microgames in the entire game itself, split over 9 stages. I thought it was more than that. Maybe some stages are repeats or something. And apparently all the different characters are associated with Wario and are helping him make games to sell as part of his new game company. I mean, you don't just beat, I suppose, the 9 stages and finish the game. There's sort of, for lack of a better term, a new game plus where you play at a harder difficulty and a faster speed and so on. And I think there's bonus games as well if you do particularly well in certain stages. But we'll move on to Jimmy's one here. First one, nail that perfectly with the chop bar fully maxed out. A little tennis minigame here, that was kind of fun there. Just a lot of these you are just standing and pushing one button to do one action. Balance the game here, you only use your D-pad to just move the guy and keep those bricks from falling down. And it's just fun though. It's just a fun little variety, and it was a nice game to revisit, especially after so long since playing it. Are these kind of themed around sports? I mean, a little bit, I guess, like ski jumping, golf, jump rope, maybe. So, especially for these initial stages, none are particularly difficult. I think there's like an endless mode you do at some point, where the speed just keeps increasing until you lose your lives. But for the actual first run through the stages, you only really do each minigame once. I don't think there's too many times that games repeat, certainly. Remember almost getting caught out with that one, just had that like little half second on the clock there as I finished. And yeah, these seem to be all the sports-based ones. There's a bit of football there. Soccer for American audiences. Hurdle, you only have to jump one hurdle there and that finishes the minigame. And we already get our second speed up of this round. I think there's 15 stages to go, and yeah, a little bit of baseball. The very basic baseball looking game there. I remember when I first played the game, that stage gave me a bit of bother for some reason. The timing of the jump's a bit strange. Yeah, and there's certainly a version of that game where you have to take like maybe 5 seconds and bounce them an extra couple of times. So, although you do play the same mini-games eventually multiple times, they will have variations and go a bit longer. This obviously is a bit of a homage to Punch-Out on the NES, and I struggled a little bit here. I actually almost died and wiped inside this boss fight here, but although I was down to my last health container, it maybe helped that I had been playing quite a bit of Punch-Out in the run-up to playing through Wario Wario Inc. Just as part of the Big 20 speedrun I'd been doing, and Punch-Out, just one of my favourite games, really, from the NES era. I'm still struggling to beat it though, especially in any kind of good time. I can usually get up to about, is it Macho Man? Super Macho Man? And then it becomes a bit of a struggle. I'm not even sure if they do an actual one that looks a lot more like Punch-Out. Although that was clearly based off Punch-Out, it doesn't have that same graphic sort of aesthetic, or any of the sort of more well-known characters from the Punch-Out game. So, we're going to get through to the third stage just after this one. This was apparently inspired by a game called Mario Artist Polygon Studio for the Nintendo 64 disk drive, which is not a console you hear getting spoken about a lot these days. That was, of course, it was a floppy disk peripheral attachment for the N64. Released in Japan on December 1999, which was very late in the 64's life cycle. That, of course, came out in 1996, quite famously. And it was short for disk drive or dynamic drive. Plugged into the N64 and allowed 64 megabit magnetic discs to be used. I'm not even sure what games were particularly known to come out for it. It was a Japan only release, did I see that right? Lifespan, yeah, it was only in Japan they brought that out. Well, anyway, there was a game for that called Mario Artist Polygon Studio, which was like a graphics editor, I suppose, similar to Mario Paint. And as I'm just reading here, that was a bit of the inspiration for this microgame concept. Apparently there was some mini-games were shared between Polygon Studio and microgames. Apparently the development team used post-it notes in order to come up with microgame ideas, and whenever anyone had an idea they'd write it down, stick it to the director's table, and then if people liked the idea it would get the chance to be used. Apparently they had to cut out some games for being too obscene and too Japanese. And I think this is the first stage I lose a life on. I just got a bit confused between which way I wanted to tilt the bike there, just a case of knowing the individual controls for each game. That one always felt a bit weird. It felt like you just had enough jump to get over the rock and no more. The avoiding the arrow minigame, I quite like that. I'm not sure what that's based on. It does kind of look like something, but I can't quite put my finger on it. Obviously a little bit of an X-Wing TIE Fighter homage it looks like there. And Wario again, I mean he is the star of the game, so it's only right that it appears in most of these mini-games here and there isn't a Mario in sight. That's certainly based, is that Load Runner that game was based off? I'm not sure. Load Runner's the first thing that comes to mind. See a repeat here, I think pretty much the first or second game that we saw in the entire collection. Which isn't ideal, so sort of short into the run, and then another repeat there with the catching minigame. Again I get hit here, it was these little bike stages that seemed to cause me the most bother. The controls, maybe I wasn't too used to them. But that's a poor excuse to make, I would say. No real theme I would say to these games. There's a lot of like space sort of theme and shooting at planets and so on, but it felt a bit odd this one. Well, there's sort of a slightly technological one here. Always enjoyed that assembling the robot game. I'm not really sure why, but I remember really liking that. And I lose a life here. I thought I just had to fly to the top of the screen, but apparently you're just meant to sit there and not get shot. There's a version of that game that comes up later where you have to avoid 3 footballs instead of 2. Nice little simple, almost Space Invader style one there. Quite enjoyed that. And again, there's a few repeats here. I thought that each stage sort of had individual and unique mini games, but it maybe wasn't the case, because we're seeing a few repeats just in this third stage here. This one felt a bit strange, just the way that you kind of leave that little ghost image when you move kind of almost put me off and made me crash. Speaking of almost crashing, almost did it there as well. Who was the guy, the taxi guy? I forgot what his name was. Always liked that one for some reason, just the smile on Wario's face when you get it done. Just about made this. I'm not sure if it counts if you get into the yellow. I think you have to get into the red for it to actually pass. And again, it's a strange look, that one. It's almost like Mario fighting Bowser, but with like realistic proportions. It's a bit off-putting, I'm not gonna lie. Here's the boss stage for the, is it second or third stage we're on now? I think it must be the third one. Yeah, it's the third one. And it's just like a little sort of almost Galaga inspired shoot 'em up homage. Despite only being about a minute long, it has like the cool bonus system where you can pick up like an extra gun to add to your ship. When they're only a minute long, it's hard not to like them. The boss fights actually seem pretty easy in this game. They just last a bit longer than the normal stages. But there's no issue with them. At least I found no issue leading up to the missions I completed, or levels I completed in this little playthrough, or this first video I should say. So, yeah, not much more to say here, just get to the end. Boss fight. This is probably almost certainly the longest individual game in the first episode here. Which is kind of mad to think when you see it's only maybe a minute long. I'm not too sure on what the exact time was. But there was no problem here. Got through to the end, not a problem. So, yeah, Wario, one of my favourite characters, Wario and Waluigi. It's a bit of a shame Waluigi never got his own little sort of spin-off platform series like Wario did. Apparently, Shigeru Miyamoto was allowed to use the slogan "more, shorter, faster," which I don't think I should even try and pronounce that in Japanese. Saita Satan Saisosoko? Soko? Something like that. But I don't speak that language. And it was a different package or box art they used in the West, though, depicting the WarioWare cast, as you can see in the bottom left there, rather than just Wario's face, as in the Japanese counterpart. So this was a well-liked game when it came out. It won Edge's award at the Edinburgh International Game Festival in 2004. And it was awarded the Editor's Choice Award and Game Boy Advance Game of the Month Award by GameSpot. And even Jeff Gersman, it's got a little bit from Jeff Gersman of Giant Bomb here, gave it a 9.1 out of 10 and praised the game for its portability and being able to play it in short bursts and return to it time and time again. Edge apparently ranked the game number 40 on the list of the 100 best games to play today, although I'm not sure when that was published, stating almost every minigame is a masterclass in how to instantly captivate with clear goals and a captivating alchemy of sound, image and control, which I agree with. I mean, the biggest challenge in these sort of games is just working out in that spare few seconds, well, not even spare few seconds, you don't have any spare seconds, working out what you're actually expected to do, and I suppose the controls for each individual game. But, yeah. I think it was remade for the GameCube as a more multiplayer focused game. WarioWare Inc. Mega Party Games. I don't think I've ever actually even seen that. It did come out in Japan, North America and PAL territories, 2004. I mean, it sounds almost perfect. It's the kind of thing that would work well with sort of multiple players. So we'll move on to this, I think, fourth stage here. I think it was also released in the Virtual Console. Oh, in 2023 the game was re-released on the Nintendo Switch as part of the Game Boy Advance collection, available through the Nintendo Switch Online Expansion Pack. I should really load up my Switch and have a look at what's been added to it since I last looked at it, because there are a lot of good titles that you get in those like Nintendo Switch Online packs, if you will. You know, including it gives you like versions of like Zelda and Metroid where you can start with the fully equipped items. So let's have a look. What's included in this Game Boy Advance pack on Switch? You get Fire Emblem, good. Kururin, never heard of that. Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga, can't say I've played that. Mario Kart the Super Circuit, Mario Kart. Metroid Fusion, which I think is an underrated Metroid game. That might be my actual, probably second favourite Metroid game after Metroid Prime. Super Mario Advance, Super Mario Advance 4, Mario Bros. 3, Super Mario World, Super Mario Advance 2, so all the Marios basically. The Legend of Zelda: The Minish Cap, which a lot of people love. I'm not a huge fan of the Zelda series, but Minish Cap seems to be one of those ones that a lot of people really like, compared to something like, I don't know, Skyward Sword that seems to get nothing but negativity. You get WarioWare Inc, obviously, the game we're watching just now, and Yoshi's Island, which is probably one of my favourite Mario games, honestly. Along with Kirby and the Amazing Mirror, F-Zero and Golden Sun coming soon. So that's a decent collection of some of the better games there. This little brush teeth mini game was always a bit odd, kind of threw me off, but easy enough to get through. I accidentally just go right in between the nostrils there, which was not what the game was requiring me to do. Found that out the hard way. And the little fireman game, I enjoyed that. I just got there with like a half a second to spare of that. I remember that one, the very first time I played that, I didn't really know what it expected me to do. I was meant to detonate that as it hit the box, but I remember losing a life certainly the first time I ever tried to do that. This felt oddly satisfying, the way that you kind of glided with the paper plane there. It just had a good kind of physical feel to it. Mucked up that stage there. You're meant to catch me in the tweezers, but just didn't manage to do it. And that, I remember that one feeling a bit awkward, just the sort of lag between opening the egg and it landing on the pan. That's a bit gross. It almost looks like a Castlevania character, that one. Threading the needle was pretty good. The needle was constantly moving, so you had to adjust it by tapping up and down, which had a good feel to it, I would say. I mean, I remember being stamped by that the first time I tried it as well, just not expecting how fast it would move. Easy squirting the eye drops there, not a problem. And we're already at the boss stage here. Oh, I had a little bit of hassle with this one. I think I might have actually lost a life in this one and just totally mucked it up. Your task with pounding this nail into the ground and straightening it out like so, but I muck it up and just accidentally hammer it right into his finger. I think if you do like the New Game Plus version of this game, if you muck up a boss stage, you have to sort of go back and do more of the normal stages. But with this version, you just get to try right again. And even though... Oh no, I mucked it up this time again. Managed to hit his hand. So, I actually game overed here. Oh god, I don't remember that. I thought I got through here without a problem. Well, that explains the 27-minute runtime, so... Managed to actually get in the nostril that time. That was kind of satisfying after mucking it up first time. Muck up the toast catch though. That was deceptive, that was. A little bit of lag in the toast popping up into the air. So yeah, most of these will probably just be repeats from the time that I first played through. Until I get to the boss stage. That was kind of disappointing. Would have knocked out a nice couple of minutes off the video there if I'd managed to do that first time. So yeah, this game came out in 2003 in Japan, March 21st, 2003. Only took 2 months to come to Europe, and actually came to Europe 3 days before North America. So fairly rare that we actually get games before America, and so close to the Japanese release, although I suppose by 2004 it was a lot less of a problem. I think why I had to pause the game here? I think. I can't remember why. Possibly got a phone call, maybe? I wonder if it's worth just skipping forward. I'm not too sure how long I had to do this for. Oh, it was just a brief pause. I think I maybe had to change some sound settings or reply to a Steam message. Something like that. So, nailed that detonate minigame, not a problem. Slight improvement on time on the fireman there, as I didn't waste too much time. And I managed to get him first time here, the little pinch. I was quite happy about that after completely mucking it up first time round. Again, straight in the eye, not a problem. Threading the needle, just about got there, not an issue. That felt weird, the deploy minigame. It felt like just mash A and hope that it sort of does it. Didn't feel like there was any nuance to it. And some of these feel surprisingly nuanced for being the minigames that they are. And here we go, get a second chance at the boss stage. Well, third chance really, because I managed to muck it up twice the first time round. And I was confident going in here that I would get the nail down without even bending it out of place. I felt like I had the rhythm really good. And then I mucked it up right at the end, but just managed to get the straight out and then just take that little extra pause of time to actually get the last nail down. So, that was the fourth stage, I believe, and we only had one more stage to go before I decided to hop the video off. I did consider cutting it out here and giving it a 22-minute video, but I was enjoying it. I was enjoying the run, enjoying the game, and I thought I'll just do one more stage. And I was glad I did, actually, because this stage turned out to be probably my favourite one. Certainly from what I can remember of the whole game, and from this little playthrough, I did certainly my highlight of this little video. Because these next games coming up are from the character 9V. I'm just going to quickly Google Mario Wiki 9V. Yeah, all these characters are unique to the WarioWare series. They weren't really based in any other games, you know, prior to that. Yeah, he's a major human character in the WarioWare series. He's a Nintendo fan who collects everything released by the company and loves to play video games. He lives with his mother 5V and his pet Frank in their house in Diamond City. What? Diamond City? I feel like I've heard that mentioned in multiple games. I think it really is just WarioWare. That's certainly where it's first mentioned. The one bad thing, well, it's probably a bit of a stretch to call it a bad thing, but the one slightly annoying thing about WarioWare is it's difficult to play all the games now. There was a game, and to be fair, this was a cool idea. I just wanted to get the Wiki WarioWare Tilt and Tumble, I think it was called. No, WarioWare Twisted was the name of the game, and it was basically you need the physical cart to play this because it's a Game Boy Advance cart that you plug in that has a sort of tilt sensor in it, so the console can detect you physically moving it, and it was built into the game rather than pushing a button or moving a D-pad to do what you're doing here. You would physically move your Game Boy Advance console, and I've never played that game, and I would imagine it's probably fairly difficult to get a hold of at any kind of decent price these days, but I would love to go and give that back a go since the series is so cool, and that was just a nice little sort of twist on it. So obviously you'll see Dr. Mario here. That was another game that I played as part of the big 2017, so I was really quite pleased to see a Dr. Mario game in there, since I had a lot of fun practicing for that one where you had to beat level 17. which out of 20, so it was pretty hectic. Duck Hunt there, obviously. I owned that as a child until I bit the cord. I didn't bite the cord until I cut the cord off my Nintendo Zapper, so I could run about just pretending it was a real gun. And that was a foolish manoeuvre to make. I mean, to be fair, the only games you could use it on were Duck Hunt or Hogan's Alley. That previous game, they're obviously based off F-Zero. And I was quite impressed by how that felt exactly like how a Mario game should feel, especially given it's just a tiny little portion of the overall game. It really made me question like how actual game engines and so on function. That minigame based off ROB, Rob the Robotic Operating Buddy, which I don't think came out in the UK. Certainly, even if it did not sell a lot of units. I'd actually just like to check that. I've no idea what game that's meant to be. Some fly swatter game. Obviously, The Legend of Zelda, the basis for this one. No, Rob did come out in the EU, September 1st, 86. I'm surprised my dad didn't buy that. I'm kind of glad, because it was a bit of a gimmick and didn't really function too well for many games. Be interesting to read about that, though. This is obviously based off the Nintendo Virtual Boy, the console that gave kids headaches with the vibrant red aesthetic, let's call it that. Again, Metroid, another game that, although that was in the big 2017, it was the start of the second half, so I didn't get around to do it since I only did the first 10 games and then quit out about 4 hours in. This one felt really easy, especially for being a boss fight. It just, I felt no bother. I almost knew that there was going to be one kind of looped up shot or whatever, or one kind of, what's the word, curveball. But it wasn't too much of an issue. I got through here pretty okay, just smacked every ball as it came. Yeah, see, I knew there'd be a little sort of slow looping one there that would try and catch me out. It's a lot of fun this though. Really did enjoy replaying this for the first time in such a while. Although I mean this is only episode 1, I have still got probably 2, 3, maybe 4 other episodes to record just to get through the full game. But yeah, that was 9-volt stage with the replications of the old NES games. The Game Boy SP is here. I don't think I actually ever owned one of those. That was the Game Boy that had the kind of flip silver, sort of fold in half. Was it? Yeah, SP. Game Boy Advance SP, released the same year that this came out. Yeah, it was an upgrade to the Game Boy Advance, and the SP of course stood for special. The Game Boy Micro, there's one I didn't own, but that was a cool little, tiny little console. Basically another upgrade on the Game Boy Advance. And well, yeah, that's been episode 1 of WarioWare Inc. for the Game Boy Advance 2003. Been a fun little one to do, and I'm glad that I sat and did those 9-volt games before finishing the video, since they turned out to be pretty cool. Obviously, just really charming to be able to go back and play these mini versions of Mario and Zelda and Metroid and so on. But that'll do it for episode 1. So thanks for watching, and I'll be back with more Wario soon.